Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Decryption, and I hope you are well. One of the biggest things in gaming is timed quests. Quests that you can only start at specific points, like at nighttime or daytime. So in games like GTA, some missions can only be started at specific times, so it says come back later. Whereas some other games, like Witcher 3, will automatically advance the time to the correct time, such as when you're fighting a boss that only comes out at night. So in today's tutorial, we're going to look at adding this feature in where we can specifically say we can start a normal quest, or we have to specify a time when the quest can activate, and we'll even add an optional flag where we can automatically advance the time to take part in the quest. So let's get started. As you can imagine, in order to do a tutorial about starting a quest at a certain time, you're going to need a quest system. If you don't, you can't really start a quest without it. So there are many quest systems out there. Anyone who's viewed any tutorials I've used before all know that I use the Narrative Tales plugin. It's a little bit expensive, but it's absolutely worth it because it just does everything out of the box. And everyone I've spoke to instantly uses it. 2 hours later, they've figured out how to do some massive thing and it's great. So that's what I'm going to be using, but the central tutorial isn't going to be around this. This is just going to be just how I start the quest. You're going to also need some type of time tracking system in your project because you need a way to track whether it's daytime, nighttime, or whatever. For me, I'm using Ultra Dynamic Sky because many people have this, and you have this time of day float here between 0, 2400, and, I set it to 1000 for midday kind of thing. If you don't have Ultra Dynamic Sky, you may have your own tracking system. That's great. The only requirement you're going to need is the ability to get the current time and the ability to potentially set the current time and potentially the ability to stop the current time from ticking, which is going to be important for some quests. If you don't have any time tracking software, honestly, you can just use a normal float. So a super basic way you can do it is if you just open up your player controller, say, and add a float, say called current time, and I'll set this to a float, and then you can either do on event tick, or I'm going to use on event begin play for mine. I'm just going to add a new event down here called start game timer, and I'm just simply going to drag off and do set timer by event, and I'm just going to set it to 1 second, but it depends how in depth you want to track your system. If you just want to check the time every second, you can do every second here. 10 seconds, you can also do that. I'm going to keep it at a second. I'm going to tick looping, and I'm going to drag from the event and just do add custom event called timer ticked. And then from here, we need to figure out how long your days are going to be. So I'm going to say my entire 24 hours of in-game time from the sunrise all the way to sunset kind of thing is going to be 15 minutes long. So I'll just add a variable down here called max daytime. And if you have got your own time system, you don't need to be doing any of this. This is just for people who don't have one so they can follow along. So max daytime, and I'm going to just compile that and set this to be in seconds. So 15 minutes is 900 seconds. And then to work out how much we increment this current time, we just take the max daytime, we divide it by 2400, but make sure that's at the top, and then that will output how much we increment the current time by per second. So if we take the current time, plus onto it this seconds here, and then set the current time, that's a super basic daytime counter essentially. We can pull off of this as well just for one more safety thing. And from here, we can say clamp, float, and we'll say the max is 2400 and the min is 0. So from here, I will just drag off one more time. If it's more than or equal to 2400, it means we've gone past midnight. So we can just reset it back to 0, and that'll basically make the clock go around. So that's a super basic game timer. You can absolutely flesh this out. You can add booleans in to stop it. You can add UI to it. But like I say, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be using the Ultra Dynamic Sky one because it's great. If you're using Narrative Pro, you probably have something like that as well, or any other framework probably has some form of daytime cycle. So for you people using Ultra Dynamic Sky, you will notice that the time by default, at least for me, doesn't seem to actually tick on. But what you have to do is come down and click Animate Time of Day. So you can see mine's currently set to 30 minutes for the day and 15 minutes for the night. So you'll see if I tick this on and come into the game, you'll see the time of day will now start advancing successfully. So you can see it's starting to go up. And that's how we can track the current time of day in Ultra Dynamic Sky, yours, or whatever you need. So we just need to integrate this with our quest to start and stop it. So I have this BP quest trigger that we created many tutorials ago. The latest version of Narrative Tales 3.7 also comes with one built in. Your system very well may also have one. But all it simply does is when you walk into it, it checks if you're the player and it starts your quest, then destroys itself. That's it. But we're going to advance this blueprint to basically do all of the time checking we need. The first variable I'm going to add into here is going to be min time to start. And I'll set it to a float. I'll also make it instance editable so we can change it in the editor, and I'll duplicate it and add a max time to start as well. So it's almost like a time range. Then I'm going to drag all of this across just to give us some space for now. And I'm going to drag in the min time to start and say, is it more than 0? And I'm going to say, does it equal -1? And we're going to set it to -1 because 0 is a valid time of day. So we don't want to keep the default at 0. So I'm going to set them both to -1. And we're going to treat -1 as, unlimited. And if the min time of start is -1, then we know that we can just carry on and do the quest like normal, right? Because there's no time of day restricting it. But if it's false, then we have to check the current player's time. Now this will vary depending on what system you've got. If you've made the player controller one, get your player controller, get the current time. If you're using another framework, get the time of day. But for me, Ultra Dynamic Sky comes with one built in, where I can do the get time of day UDS. And it outputs the current time value, and that's what we need. It gives us the float. That's all built in. Then from here, I can say, is the current time of day more than or equal to the min start time? And then, because the max time is technically optional, because you could set the min time to start to be 2000, which is 8 o'clock, but the max time might not be set because it just lasts until midnight and then it disappears. So we need to take that into account because it'll be nice. Whereas equally, you could say you can only start this quest at 1600 to 2000, so it gives us the advantage of doing that. So I'll take the max time in, and I'll drag off and say, is it equal -1? If this is true, then we can just ignore it, right? However, if it's not, then we can drag off and say, less than or equal to, and we can drag in our get time of day UDS, and we'll set this to an OR, joining them both together, and then we can set these to an AND, like so. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, get the current time of day and get the minimum start and say, is the current time of day more than the minimum? So if the minimum is 1000, is the current time of day more than 1000? If it's false, this will be false. Down here, it will say, is the max start time -1? True, then it'll just pass true up here and it'll rely on the minimum time only, which is what we want. However, if this is not -1, then the OR will be false, so it'll come down to the next one and say, is the current time of day less than or equal to the max time? If the max time is 2000, but our current time is 2100, this will return false, and this will return false, meaning it's not going to work. So that's a nice, easy way to do it. One little performance thing I'm going to do, just in case, is I'm actually going to drag this down and connect it to both, like that. This does just mean it's only got to go here and get the data once, but it also means that if, for some reason, this lags or it delays for a second or something, these two aren't going to have completely different values. They're going to get the same value. It shouldn't do, I don't think it does, but depending on the system you're using, it might do. And now with this, we can add another branch to the false, and we can connect it up like so, and connect the true over to here. If it's false, we can't start the quest at all, so we're not going to, but that's where we can show a custom error message. So for me, I'm going to drag down and do add new notification, and this is something we've built in before, and I'm just going to promote this to a variable called out of time message. And I'm just going to populate this with some default values. Come back between 1600 and 2000. There we go. Just something super basic. And we'll hit compile and save. And essentially, that's all we really need to do. If you start your quest some other way via dialogue or something, you basically just need to replicate the same thing here. One thing to take away from this is I am actually going to suggest something like this to the narrative team to say, should we add something into the quest directly? That's a function you can override to say whether or not it can be started. It'd be great for something like this, but we'll see. So if I come back to my tent burning map here, the one that I'm going to be doing it on, if I just drag my trigger in like so, and we'll give this a normal quest, just one that it can start randomly, and then I'll duplicate it across, and this is where I'm going to set my new quest up. Now if you're not using narrative, this is going to be completely pointless to you, but all I'm going to do is set up a basic quest that says go and burn that tent and then come back. That's it. So for me at least, I'm just going to come into my quests. I'll just create a new quest called QB Burn Enemy Tents, and I'll open it up. I'll set the name and the description like so, and then back on my quest graph I can just build my quest up. So I've already got a task for activate burning, and the tag that I want is, I'll just put tent, and I can succeed the quest off just like that. Super basic quest. And then I can assign it to this new quest one here. But on this one, I'm actually going to come and set the time to be 1600 and 2400. And there's a little nicety for it, just for the developers who are using it. I will also come back to the floats and just set the slider range to be 0 and 2400, because that's my limit, and I'll do the same for the value range as well. If you have a custom time, like if your days are 12 hours long, for example, you can set it there. It just gives us a nice slider look. And you can see I've printed out my time at the top. So if I run into it, it will say, come back between 600 and 2000. You can, populate that however you want to. But it's basically saying I can't start that quest, right? If I come into here, the normal one just works fine. That's completely okay. If I just do the advanced time and set it to 1600, and you'll see, as I try to start the quest, it will just keep erroring, saying I'm not in the correct time. And I've left this in on purpose because if you've watched my other videos, learning to debug is a huge advantage in making games or writing applications. So what I'm going to do is I need to know why this is failing. So I'm just going to press Shift F1 to break out, and I'll come into my BP quest trigger. And I know it's hitting this here, meaning this has got to be false. There's no other way to it. So I'm just going to come to here and hit the F9 key to add a breakpoint, or I'll right click and just do toggle breakpoint. And then I'm going to go and trigger it again. And you'll see it snapped us into here. It's paused the entire game's loop. So we can look around here and you can see the red arrows here are showing you where it's going. So it's definitely hitting this, right? If I hover over this and here, it's false, meaning something here is causing it to fail. So let's start with the min time. Let's have a look at it, because we can use our mouse as almost a probe to have a look around. So it's currently 1600, which is correct, and the current time of day is 1643. That is more than it. So if I hover over this one, it's true, so it's not that. If I hover over the one below, it's false, which is the OR here. Okay, is it this one here? So that's false, which is true, because our max start isn't -1. That's okay, we're happy with that. But if I come down to this one is also false. How come? So you can see our current time of day is 1643. Is that less than the max start time? Well, technically yes it is, but we're doing it the opposite way. We're saying, is 2400 less than 1600? No, it's not. So we can stop that running, remove the breakpoint, and I'm going to flip these around, which I really wish there was an option to just flip around, it'd be nice. I'm going to take this one and put it there, and take this one and put it there, so it checks it in the correct order. So if we start it now, it should still fail because we're at currently 1000, so it says come back between that time. This one still works. Let's advance the time to 1600, and now when I walk into it, the quest should begin. There we go. Burn enemy tents. So I can run up, I can start the fire, and the quest should complete itself. There we go, the quest has been completed. Time-based quests. So we can still do some more testing on it. So we can come here and we can say -1 for this, to say it can't be started. So basically say it lasts until midnight. So if I run into here, it says the error. If I advance the time to be 2350, this should still work, so I can run in and start it, which is perfect. But if I advance the time past midnight to say 0, this will no longer work. There you go. I can only do it after the minimum time, which is great. So one of the other things a lot of quests do is it sets the time when you start it to a specific region. Like if you're attempting to burgle something in, I believe GTA San Andreas does this, it says, hey, come back at night and you can only start it at 6 p.m. But then the quest automatically sets itself to say midnight, ready so it's really dark time. So back on the quest trigger, I'm going to come and add a variable here, and I will call it time of day override. And I'll make it instance editable again. I'll set the slider range to be -1 to 2400, and I'll do the same below. And I am set it to -1 this time. We probably should have done it on these ones as well, because we technically can set it to -1 for both of them. There we go. And then on this time of day override, I am just going to default it to -1 again. And then if it's -1, we're going to ignore it. But then after we begin the quest, let's make some gap here. Before we destroy it, I'm going to take the time of day override and do the same check. Does it equal -1? If it equals -1, we're just going to go straight and destroy it, right? If it's false, then we need to set the time of day. Now again, this does depend on what time of day system you're using. I'm using UDS, so we can just do UDS set time of day, and it'll ask us to pass in the time of day, which is going to be our override, and then we can call destroy. And now this lets us do something really unique, because back on here, we can say you can only start this quest at 1600, right? And that's, getting to night time. But then we can outright say, set the time to 2000. So if I play it this time, you can see normally we start it, nothing happens. All good. But if I advance the time of day to 1600, we can now start that, but check the timer when we run into it. It's instantly been set to 2000 long, which is great if you're doing a nighttime quest and you want to wait. Or like with The Witcher, where you start it and it sets the time of day. Because that's something else we can do now. If we remove the min and max start times to -1 and start it, you can wrap this begin quest up with a cutscene, a fade to black or something, he kneels down, he starts meditating, whatever. But when we walk in, the time of day is instantly transitioned to the correct time. How cool's that? Equally, if you do want to transition the time, you can absolutely just stick that on the quest itself. I'm just building into the quest trigger because while we're here doing time stuff, it's a perfect place to do it. One other thing you might want to do is freeze the time of day. Because if your quest could, say you're fighting a boss battle at night time, or this tent burning one here, maybe there's 50 tents the player has to burn, but there's fights in the middle when you get discovered. That might take the player longer than 15 minutes to do, and if your time of day is only set to 15 minutes, it's not going to work for you. So it's very common to pause the time of day from advancing until they finish the quest. So let's make it do that as well, because we're making this so feature rich. So I'm going to come and add a boolean called b pause time of day. And I'll set this to a boolean, and I'll make sure it's false by default. And then after we've done all of this, after we've set the time of day, because you may want to set that, I'm going to add my branch in. And because I'm on 5.6 or 5.7 will work, I will right click and do convert to branch. If you're on anything before, just drag off and do branch. If it's false, we can just connect it straight to the destroy actor like that. The set time of day should also go up there. So it sets the time of day and then checks whether we should pause it. Now, rather annoyingly, there doesn't seem to be a global function to set the animate time of day, at least on Ultra Dynamic Sky. Whereas we want to check this box on or off. So we're going to have to go and do that manually, but it's easy enough to do. So all we're going to do inside here for UDS is I'm going to use the function getUltraDynamicSky, and that'll give it us. There is a valid function, so we can check that just to be safe. If it's invalid, we'll just go straight to destroy. If we get the UDS, we can then call setAnimate time of day. We can untick it and connect back to destroy actor like so. So we can wrap these in some comments just to make it easy to read. So on this one, we'll call it pause time of day. This one, we will do set time override. And in this rather long one, we will do check if time is allowed to start quest. Big comments, just so we can read it without having to reread the entire code if you wish. We're going to hit compile and save. And now we've got another option where we can come into our request and we can say, when we start it, pause the time of day at 2000. So we have basically an unlimited time to do it. And you'll see, because we've not got any min or max, the time is going, but as soon as we walk into it, it becomes nighttime and the time is frozen. It won't advance anymore, which is what you might want for a quest, that you have an unlimited time to do it. And because I like making sure that people who are watching the tutorials really do have everything they want to do it, we're going to add one more feature in, which is how do we fail the quest if the timer goes past the maximum time? That is also a potential option that you might want to look at doing. So this, unfortunately, is going to be even more specific to narrative, but the code should be generic enough. I'm going to set this back to 1600 and 2400. I'll adjust the error message so it looks pretty as well. There we go. So we want to say on the quest that you can only start this between 1600 and 2400, because that's when it's going to be maximum prime time darkness, you know? And I'm not going to pause the time of day, but I'm going to set the time override to be 2000. So if you arrive at 1600, it'll be like, you know, you're preparing to do it. Whatever, you can add some story logic into it. But we want it to say that as the time is advancing, that you've only got, you know, 4 hours in-game time to finish this quest. And if I don't do it, if we go back to, you know, 0, the quest should fail and say, you've missed your chance. So the way we're going to handle this on my quest is, at least in the way Narrative Tales works, is we have these things called branches, and they act almost like a door or a pathway. So we come in and we sit on a quest start or a state, and we can see all of the branches, so we can add other branches if we really want to onto it, and we can pick one to go down. Once we go down it, we can then action whatever it does. So what we need on this is another branch that checks the current time of day, and it continuously keeps checking it, and if we get past a certain time, then it fails. That's what we want it to do. And the logic for that pretty much is exactly what we have here to check the time for the min and maxes, but the only difference is we will fail the task or whatever if it advances past it. So I'm going to come back to my narrative folder in my blueprints, and inside my tasks, I'm going to add a new narrative task called NT within time of day. And I'll open it up. So it's pretty simple. All I have is on begin task, and then when I'm ready, I just add progress. And add progress will basically make it complete, essentially. And that's where we can put all of the logic we want into it. So how do we actually want it to do it then? So we're going to need the same variables like we've got here, min and max. So we'll come and add them onto here, like so. And then in here, we need some way of almost pulling our current time. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do it. This is one of the occasions where event tick is actually going to be pretty decent. And on narrative tasks and most blueprints, you can also set how often it ticks. So you don't need it ticking every frame. That's silly. You're never going to be able to accomplish something within a frame, right? So you could set it to something like every second, every 5 seconds, something like that. However, if you don't want to use event tick, you could also do set timer by event like we did at the start. However, if you're using Ultra Dynamic Sky or your custom one, you very well may have an event dispatcher to use. So if we just come back and grab the get Ultra Dynamic Sky with the branch, right? At least for me. So get your current time system. If it's false, I'm just going to throw an error saying error UDS not found, because that's a problem at that point, right? But if it's true, Ultra Dynamic Sky actually has an event dispatcher where we can tick it at certain intervals. So we can say at midnight, hourly, or minute, right? So if I ping it at minute, you've also got every second, but I think that's a bit overkill. So we've got a bunch of different one, and you've got current hour, custom time is set, so that's if you override it. So depending on how you want your timer system to work, you can pick one of these. So for example, hourly will give you every 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, all the way up, right? But if you set it to, say, you've got 30 minutes of in-game time, so 150, then the hourly is going to give you an extra 50 seconds before it hits the 200 mark. Whereas that's where then you can start using every minute. But the problem with every minute is it literally just gives you 0 to 59. It doesn't give you the current hour either. So if your timer is going to be hourly, you can use the event dispatcher to make it a lot more efficient. However, the current version of Ultra Dynamic Sky doesn't give you an option to poll it every minute, including the hour. We could run some calculation on it to, also get the hour, but it's going to be a bit flaky to do that. So what I'm actually going to do is do a combination. So I'm going to, on the true, bind to every minute. So every single minute it goes up, it's going to tick this event, right? And then in here, I'm going to right click and do UDS get time of day. And then that will give it us so we can run our checks on it. The checks we want to run is going to be the exact same as the ones we've done on Begin Quest here. So I can grab pretty much all of this and we can paste it down here. And we don't need this UDS code, so we can just connect it straight up. You see all the variables have aligned nicely, which is good. And then we're just going to reverse all of the logic. So I'm actually going to remove the -1 minimum time start. If you're within a time range, you kind of need a min and max to check the time range. And it's going to be easier on the logic. So for the task at least, it's just going to come straight in and say, is the current time more than the minimum time? And is it less than the max time? Because that's how you set a time range. You can't have a range if you don't have a start or an end. And that does mean we'll also set the variables to be a minimum of 0, 0. And then if it's true, then that means we're still within the time range, right? But if it's false, then it means we've gone outside of it. So I will just complete the branch by saying add progress, which will basically tell this task to complete itself. The only other thing I'm going to do for cleanup is on end task, I'm just going to do the same thing up here and unbind from the event just to keep it clean. It should do it automatically, but this is just a nice to have. So from UDS, unbind every minute, and I'll just connect that up to this function here, just so it cleans up itself. And then back on our quest blueprint, I can now add in our new time range branch. On the quest, I'll delete the quest state and just add fail the quest. And I can set the message to be you ran out of time. And in here, I'll just mark it as a hidden task because we don't want it to be visible. It's just if you're out of time, you fail. But you can absolutely make it visible if you want to add pressure to the players. And I will say you've got to be doing this within 2000 and 2400. That's the range that you've got. And we can hit compile and save. So let's test it now. So if I start the quest here, it won't do anything because we've got a min time. So let's advance the time to 1600 and we can now begin this. When we run into it, it should advance us to the correct time. So let's run in. You can see the quest has started. We're at 2000. We've got time to start this quest, right? So if I run around and just complete this instantly, it should succeed the quest because we've burned the temp. We're in the time limit and then the quest has succeeded. Great. We're all done, yeah? If I start it again, you see we've got the time started. If I advance to almost the time limit, so we're about to run out of time, and we give it 10 seconds for the time to run out, the quest should automatically fail because we've bypassed the time. There you go. The quest has failed. We've run out of time. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. How cool is that? We've now made a quest that we can do it. If you plug this into a big failed screen, do whatever you want. You can respawn the quest if you want to, do everything you need. And there you go. There is starting day and night quests and basically, hopefully plugging it into any system you have. So I hope this was helpful, ladies and gentlemen. If you can think of any improvements, please let me know below. If you've got any other things you'd like to see, also please let me know below. Thank you for watching. My name is Decryption and I will see you next time.